Are you getting pressure from finance to justify or reduce your cloud bill? CloudZero is the only cloud cost platform loved by engineers and trusted by finance. CloudZero can identify unused, idle, or over-provisioned resources, alert you to spend anomalies, and organize 100% of your spend into a framework that mirrors your business structure, like cost per customer, product feature, or team. It's the most powerful platform ever built to provide accurate, granular visibility into your total cloud spend without the typical pitfalls of legacy cloud cost management tools like endless tagging or clunky Kubernetes support. Manage cost, optimize development, and maximize profit, all in one platform. Join companies like Rapid7, Drift, and SeatGeek by visiting cloudzero.com/cloudcast to get started. That's cloudzero.com/cloudcast. Visit today to experience immediate and ongoing savings on your cloud bill.
Cloudcast Media presents from the massive studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is the Cloudcast with Aaron Delp and Brian Gracely, bringing you the best of cloud computing from around the world.
Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome back to the Cloudcast. We're coming to you live from our massive Cloudcast studios here in Raleigh, North Carolina. And it is Aaron for Cloud News this week. And for many of you, it is KubeCon week, whether you're attending live or keeping up with it virtually. I know there's going to be a lot of really good news and developments coming out of the show, and we're certainly looking forward to recapping that in future episodes. But for this week, we're going to jump into cloud news here quickly. And as promised by Brian on one of the Sunday Perspectives recently, we're going to start digging into AI a little bit more. And so one or two of our cloud news articles are all about AI this week. And first of all, we have Futurepedia, really good link to a website, and it's the largest AI tools directory. I thought this was a really good find and is a good first place to dig in a little bit. And then right behind that, AWS went and announced new tools for building generative AI on AWS. And this was multiple tools there. There was Amazon Bedrock, which is really how to build the models. And then they announced EC2 instances to go along with it. And then finally, Amazon Code Whisperer. Think of Code Whisperer a little bit like Copilot and some of these others when it comes to generating code and AI-assisted generation of code. So lots going on in the AI space and some really good links to go check out and stay on top of the news there. And then in addition to that, the good folks over at RedMonk, specifically James Governor, also put together some, a nice article on why OpenAI is the new AWS and the new kingmakers still matter. Really good article, really thoughtful article. I really liked his take on all of this. So definitely go check that out. And really digs into kind of the status of what is going on with OpenAI in general in the community right now. With that, moving on to our next and final news bit this week. We do have some additional links in the show notes, by the way, but I wanted to keep cloud news this short this week so that we could get onto the main article. Andy Jassy released his annual shareholder letter, and this one clocks in, and this is his second one, and it clocks in at, 7 pages or so, and link to it in the show notes. But I thought it was a really good read, a really fascinating read on kind of the state of the market and where Amazon has been, somebody that has been there since the beginning, right? He's been there since it started and watched all of this kind of grow up, and really good perspective in all of this. So with that, I'm going to wrap up cloud news this week. And coming up right after the break, we're going to be talking about managing document workflows and fax integrations with Upland software.
Today's sponsor is Datadog, a real-time monitoring platform that unifies metrics, logs, and distributed traces from your cloud containers and orchestration software. Datadog's container-centric monitoring features allow you to track the health and performance of your dynamic container environment. The container map provides a bird's-eye view of your container fleet, and the live container view searches, groups, and filters your containers with any criteria, like tags, pods, or workspaces. To start monitoring your container clusters, sign up for a free trial today, and Datadog will send you a free t-shirt. Visit datadog.com/container-cloudcast to get started. That's datadog.com/container-cloudcast. And we're back. And folks, one of the things that tends to come up from time to time in your day-to-day life, and probably comes up all the time for your organizations, is, how do you manage workflows? How do you manage especially document workflows? But more importantly, there's going to be times when you're engaging with different types of organizations, whether it's healthcare, financial services, government, in which you've got to be able to get them information, but get them information in specific formats. And specifically, oftentimes we still see fax being a big piece of being able to communicate, right? We need to be able to send them certain documents in certain formats, and they may be digital, they may be still analog, and we all need to be able to do that. And especially in today's world, in which everything's on the go, we've got tons and tons going on. We want to make sure that we can do that in a way that's going to be tied into the cloud and tied into all the other things that we do on a day-to-day basis. And oftentimes Aaron and I will run into situations in which we go, okay, what's going on in that part of the world? Something that maybe we haven't covered on the show in a while. And today we're going to kind of get a chance to dive into that. We're going to get a chance to dive into document workflows. What does fax mean in today's world around cloud? And then, how does AI come into play with this? Because we're seeing so much interesting stuff happen around text and text to speech and text to capture and so forth. So really excited today to have Shawn Freligh, who is Senior Vice President and General Manager of Content Lifecycle Automation at Upland Software. Shawn, welcome to the show. Great to have you on today.
Hey, thank you, Brian. Thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, excited to have you on. Tell us a little bit about your background. You've been very, very involved with this part of the market for quite a while. So give us a sense of both your background and then what you really focus on at Upland Software.
Yeah, again, thank you. I like to think of myself really kind of as a technologist, even though I run a business unit within Upland Software that really kind of, deals with content and life cycle of that content and document workflows. But I've been doing this for kind of 25 years in that digital transformation, digitization space, kind of starting off as a software engineer, working with OCR technology, optical character recognition technology, sure. ICR technology, document intelligence. Spent the better half of 15 years kind of developing product strategies in the space, kind of really thinking about what is content and how can we apply intelligence to that. So, which includes, of course, what we're talking about today, faxing and all of the excitement that we have around that, believe it or not. So,
yeah. No, that's very cool. You and I were talking before the show. In a past life for myself, I was heavily involved with fax, especially around when voice over IP came along, and all of us trying to figure out, we were trying to figure out how to digitize voice communication. And then people said, well, I also have the fax machine plugged into the system. How are we going to make that work? So it was interesting to swap some stories ahead of talking. How does technology like fax maintain a foothold in the marketplace, right? I know for some people, they used to interact with it, but as a broader sense, like where is fax in terms of usage in the marketplace, and maybe more importantly, like how has it evolved? Because there's been a lot of improvements in various ways that we share information, we share documents. Kind of give us the broad picture of where fax is today.
Yeah, excellent. I think in the end, this probably turns into a little bit of a history lesson to modern day technology and how we think about it, if we can call it that, in the world of fax, all the way to kind of what the future is around it. So, but if we kind of go back, right, fax really does have a long history, and one of the things it has done, it has evolved. But it's also kind of stayed the same too, which is a little bit of its staying power, right? In that not evolving too quickly in the way that we think about technology. So the first fax machine patent was developed in 1843 by a gentleman by the name of Alexander Bain. So that was kind of the first patent of the technology.
Wow.
It wasn't really until the 1960s that what we think of fax machines today were invented by Xerox, actually, out there. They had obviously a lot of patents on different things. It's crazy to think about that.
Wow, 120 years between the two is amazing.
Yeah, exactly. And then it was kind of in the 1970s, really, especially at the end of the 1970s, that faxing really became a business standard, right? It was business standard equipment out there. So, quite the history there. But really today, modern day faxing really generally happens over fax servers and fax equipment or cloud-based faxing, right? That you see out there. So, but if we can kind of break kind of modern day faxing, if we think about it in that realm, into kind of 4 different generations. So Gen 1, the kind of the implementation of modern day fax servers was really when email became a thing, right? Everybody was bolting on Microsoft Exchange servers and stuff. So you just added a fax server onto it, right? So you could do email to fax and fax to email. Then kind of, as you mentioned, right, kind of how you got into it really is that Gen 2, the resurgence was really based on that voice over IP transition, right, that everybody was making, or VoIP technology. And everybody said, hey, what do I do now that my whole network is based on VoIP technology? How do I do that in fax, right? So fax over IP became a thing, right, with the T38 protocol and T37 fax over email and all this kind of stuff, was a thing. Now today, right, in kind of this Gen 3, and I'm going to combine Gen 3, Gen 4 kind of into one, really you start to get the SaaS-based model out there, or cloud fax, right? So how can I reduce, the physical equipment that I'm supporting in our data centers, fax machines around the office, MFPs laying around, right? An MFP being a multifunction device. It's just copiers, the Xerox machines, the HP machines that are sitting around offices. How can I reduce that footprint and reduce those expenses? So, organizations have started to move to cloud, right? I don't want to control it. I still want to have the functionality because I have to, because it's in our business, but I don't want to control the infrastructure anymore. So that's kind of the Gen 3. And then that Gen 4 is really starting to imply intelligence around those documents, right? Those faxes. So that's kind of where we are today, as I think about, the faxing as how it's kind of moved and evolved over time. Today, again, we're kind of in this cloud world, right? Still a lot of on-premise. There's hybrid models, and there's, of course, cloud. But the whole conversation is switching to, how can I provide intelligence around that content?
Yeah, no, it makes total sense, especially sort of what you call, phase 3 and phase 4. The phase 3 piece of it makes complete sense, especially if we, even if we just draw a parallel to what we see in, with like data management, right? Data backup. People, stop wanting to pay to have, a dedicated data center for backup, or to have, facilities that who is going to staff those 24/7. Could you outsource that? Could you put it somewhere else? Give it to people who specialize in that stuff. And then, absolutely. The whole idea of being able to bring, probably what feels full circle to you from OCR back in the day to now applying AI technologies, right? It's how do we bring intelligence to, the bits and bytes and the characters and the letters that are on the sheet. I'm curious if we can dive a little bit, since AI is this topic that is top of mind for everybody these days. It feels like it's exploded over the last, couple of weeks, couple of months and so forth, especially here in 2023. Where is AI? What's its applicability? How do you guys at Upland Software apply that to the fax world and kind of all of document management?
Yeah, Brian, if I walked up to you on the street, or we were on the train together, or, sitting next to each other on the plane, and I started talking about fax, and I was like, hey, fax can have artificial intelligence applied to it, right? You'd probably call me crazy. Am I wrong in that? So when I think about faxing, right, first of all, you got to know that at the end of the day, fax is content, and content just happens to be in the form of a document that needs to be transferred between two places, right? Two endpoints. Let's face it, right? You and me today, right? If we had to communicate, we are not going to send a fax between each other, right? That just doesn't really happen anymore. So when faxes go to different places, generally speaking now today, right, faxes are occurring between two different systems. So think about a healthcare provider sending a fax to another healthcare provider of a patient's medical records. Receiving something in email, right, a digital document that I need an email from a from a brokerage firm or something like that comes an email that can then be digested into my business system, or a fax coming in that needs to go through kind of a line of business application or my internal digital process workflow I have for documents, right? So it comes in that form. And once it comes into that form and once it's content, once it's digitized, we can then start to apply some of those technologies around that, right? We can OCR that document, right? OCR is a form of machine learning.
Right.
We can read barcodes. We can do more advanced kind of forms recognition, right? So if I'm in a doctor's office and I'm receiving referrals, right, and I get a bunch of referrals, we can apply that kind of that forms automation technology around that to extract those referrals, extract patient information so we can push that into kind of that downstream system. So fax itself is not AI enabled, right? I mean, that would be kind of crazy for me to say that. But what it does do is, by in nature of becoming digitized, it enables that content to be AI driven downstream. So that's really where it comes to play today, right? Where if you weren't digitizing that, you could not start to put in those techniques.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And I think sometimes, when some of us as individuals think of how we use fax versus, you talk about it in the bigger sense of, a healthcare system, or, kind of the interaction that happens between doctors and insurance companies and, secondary doctors that are looking at things like it. You have to sort of systematically look at it. And yeah, it makes complete sense. It becomes part of just information flow. It just happened to start in the format that was fax, but then beyond that, it becomes document workflows. It becomes information gathering. It becomes scanning and all the other things that happen. I'm curious, and again, I'm gonna be a little bit naive in this, or I'm going to date myself a little bit. I recall, back in the day when we had fax machines in the office, and some people are going to go, "What's an office?" And I don't remember that from 2 or 3 years ago, but even still. You had to worry sometimes about, I need you to fax this to me, and I need to make sure I'm near the fax machine so that somebody doesn't read something that they shouldn't read, or it comes out of the machine and the paper slips and goes underneath the table and it gets lost. And where is security? I have to imagine, as we've talked about this for the last few minutes, like this is part of document management. This is part of data management. Are there things that have to be unique about security for fax? Because especially, I know they're used a ton in healthcare environments where you've got, HIPAA standards, they're in banking and financial services where you have all sorts of standards and regulations. What's evolved in terms of security around, the workflows for fax and collecting information, storing information?
Yeah. And that's just a really good topic, and I think you can kind of break it down into 3 different areas that again I'd like to think about. So kind of is the first, as you mentioned, right? I have these fax machines sitting around my office, and there could be a document that comes through that has a lot of personal information on that, protected information, especially with all of the laws, right? In Europe, of course, you get GDPR, we have data protection in the UK, we have in California, we have privacy laws and stuff like that. So you have to be really careful with what data is coming out in whatever form that it comes out. So so this is again why fax machines in a lot of cases, the actual, as we think about them, that little machine sitting plugged into a phone line, have kind of went away, and you start to think about fax servers, cloud fax systems that keep these things in digitized form, so it never actually gets printed out. It gets sent electronically into some other system that gets processed that is secure. You also, of course, have techniques. So if you have like fax server software, like what we have here at Upland Software, we have our AccuRoute software, our Interfax software. We can control how people receive that stuff on those physical machines on a floor if they want to keep those physical machines. Like again, through a multifunction device, we can kind of present ourselves on that device and ask them to pull down that fax when they're ready to by putting in a key pin or something so that they can pull that data down. The other thing is too, we have to think about is kind of the secure layer of fax in the communications side of things, right? So if we start thinking about fax over IP and going over the network and the wire, right, in T38, that can all be encrypted at levels of TLS 1.2 and higher. So the communication is very secure. But I'd also turn to kind of another way to think about this, and this is the data itself, right? So if you go into any organization, right, if you step out and say, okay, I'm a chief security officer, or I'm a compliance officer of an organization, and I have this data that's going around in my company, and I monitor that today, right? So if I have a document or an email that flows through, I'm monitoring that. If I have other electronic communications, I'm monitoring that within my network and within my key security systems to see what's going in and out of my organization, looking for data loss, looking for leaks, looking for just kind of how that data is being used. But if I when I go and ask most CSOs or most compliance officers, what do you do with fax? Are you monitoring that? And there's pretty much almost always a blank stare, right? Because they've never really thought about, oh, we don't really monitor our fax communications because how do we do that, right? If I have a fax machine.
Yeah.
So this is where it kind of goes back up into being able to apply intelligence around that content that has been digitized. So now if I have that content digitized right now, I can actually start to interrogate and subject that to some level of scrutiny, through those AI techniques, through OCR, right? I can make that data available. I can mine that data. So now all of a sudden through these techniques, I can apply data loss protection. I can apply data loss detection just like I do in email and other electronic communications that go through the system. So those are kind of the three different ways at least I think about security when it comes to a fax and the different layers that you have to kind of apply within an organization.
Yeah, no, it makes a ton of sense. And again, I think, the thing that I'm hearing over and over again is so many of the things that we think about in terms of data management, in terms of people wanting to, security management, people wanting to offload, sort of common tasks that they don't either don't think about or don't want to think about. Those apply to the fax domain as well, just like they do for data, just like they do for other parts of IT. So interesting. I'm curious. We talked a little bit about healthcare as a vertical that this is relevant to. Where do you see the most? Is fax still sort of universally across sort of every industry and so forth, or are there certain trends in certain industries that are driving adoption or usage that's different maybe it was than in past?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you mentioned it, right? Healthcare, hands down, is the biggest driver of fax in the US, right? And that's primarily because, of course, our healthcare system is more disparate than you might see in other countries out there. So I give you just a prime example, right? I moved from one location to another location, approximately 100 miles away, which meant I had to change doctor's offices. Sure. So all of my medical records had to be sent from one location to the next. We don't have a shared system of medical records within our country.
Right.
So the way that I do that is I had to go through and I had to fill out this, release of medical records and stuff at my current doctor office and provide all the information to go back to the other doctor's office. And there's really two ways that this happens for healthcare providers and stuff that are not connected through a larger consortium or something like that. It either happens through mail, right? The doctor's office prints all of those records out, shoves them into an envelope, puts a bunch of stamps on it, and sends it off to the other provider, who then turns around and scans all of that information in, right, to digitize it. The other way that they do it, of course, is through fax. And the reason why they do it through fax, one, is because, again, it's a digital record, so it's just easier to turn around and transmit digitally through fax to another provider and have that remain digital. So it's kind of a benefit to both sides. But it is also considered HIPAA compliant, right? So I can't package that up and put it into an email and just send an email because it's not HIPAA compliant, right? It's too easily able to be seen. So in healthcare, hands down in the US is where we see the growth. And we do actually see a lot of growth in the healthcare market there. Finance is another place, right? So bank records. If you ever apply for a mortgage, oftentimes the way that mortgages get done, for data collection, like driver's licenses, extra documents that you want to send, even if you do it through an electronic or an online mortgage company, right? A lot of times they'll give you a form that has a barcode on it or something like that and ask you to fax all these different things back. And then that barcode on that document kind of provides the intelligence around that. Account opening at a bank, right? Kind of the same type of thing. All of this also is driven in the finance world a lot by really, really strong ROIs. Again, kind of goes back to that security conversation. I can now, kind of look at what and interrogate documents that are coming through. I have more control over that digitization piece, but also to just going and unplugging each one of those, kind of those copiers that sit on the floor that's scan, copy, print enabled. Every time you unplug one of those phone lines, right, you're saving $30 to $60 that you can consolidate into a service like AccuRoute or Interfax to save that money. So if I have 1,000 of those connections sitting around in my organization, right, do the math, right, 1,000 times $30 to $60, huge ROI that happens like instantly for payback. And I don't have any of the management along that, dealing with that. So you see it a lot in finance because they have huge footprints of, these devices and stuff in offices. The other kind of smaller area that you might see it a lot in, is kind of car dealerships and stuff, right? So
sure.
Have you bought a car recently and they're like, hey, can you fax me your binder, right? So you see it that way, right? From your insurance company to the car dealership. I'm kind of guilty of going through too many cars. I've had too many experience with that piece.
I've got two teenage daughters, so I absolutely can relate. Exactly. Well, so in the sort of other parts of the cloud world, there are these things that the analyst firm Gartner comes out with every once a year, once every 6 months, called the Magic Quadrant. In your world, there are companies like Enterprise Content Management who come out with their data quadrants. You guys, Upland Software is essentially like the AWS of this space. You guys are way up to the kind of up to the far and right. For folks that are interested in they're in one of those industries, for example, government, finance, automotive, healthcare, that's looking to save money to get better ROIs. Like what's the offering they're most likely looking at, and what sort of results can they typically see?
Yeah, excellent question. So we do in Upland Software, right? We have, again, the content lifecycle group, which is the group that I run. And we do really have a number of different product lines that deal with content. And of course, today we're really dealing with it and we're talking about it in the term of facts, because, it's kind of one of those things that people forget about, but it really is something that is integrated and embedded into our business culture in a lot of different ways, especially through kind of back end type of integrations. So I think, as I mentioned, right, so when we think about kind of like ROI and stuff, right, there's a couple different ways, right? Is to think about specifically around facts is, kind of unplugging those phone lines. That's an easy ROI. There's also the cost of reducing kind of your own footprint, data center footprints and stuff like that by moving it to a cloud solution like our Interfax platform, right? Where we take care of all of that kind of back end heavy footprint of telephony and all that kind of stuff and the management of that. So really good ROIs there. But even the bigger driver of that, again, kind of going back into that content life cycle portion, right, through all those different products that we have, is to think about, again, I said this multiple times, is to think about that facts as a document that is actually content, and what can I do with that content to streamline it through my business processes, in the same way that I might treat a digital document that gets produced as an invoice or a PO from my AP program, right? And how does that go through my digital process? You got to start thinking about these documents in that same way, so that you can kind of streamline those processes, which then in turn has strong ROIs to itself, right? So By doing that, right, you can start to reduce the number of lost documents out there, and if you lose a document, the cost to replace those documents, to recreate those documents, which again, from content that you might have in disparate systems and stuff like that. And then kind of the final piece to that is to really think about the security, right? Because there can be real costs to not being compliant to something, or to, having data leakage or having data loss, right, that goes through this. So all of those different areas, kind of, if you think about that whole content lifecycle and how it goes through, that quadrant at the end of the day is what we play in, like you say, kind of the AWS content world. And all of those have strong value with really strong outcomes that can drive a strong ROI.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic, and especially in today's economy where things are a little more unknown. Being able to point to things that have very, very strong ROI, very strong cost savings capabilities, and and things that you can probably measure in weeks and months as opposed to years and years of investment is super important. Shawn, I'm gonna kind of wrap it up there. This has been fantastic. We've had a chance to dig into some technology that should be kind of part of every day for every business. They may not be as visible as some of the things we talk about in the cloud every day, but the fact that people should be applying the same sort of principles they use for, should I move to the cloud? Can I take advantage of cloud flexibility? How do I manage security around things? How do I manage compliance for my organization? Really, really important to think about those things. And it was fantastic to sort of be able to pick your brain, learn a little bit more. Hopefully folks, got a lot out of this. If people want to, engage with the team at Upland, what's the best ways to go about doing that, or what are some of the programs that are the easiest way to get started?
Yeah, absolutely. So www.uplandsoftware.com is kind of the place to go to learn about all of Upland's product lines. Specifically, though, around this CLA or Content Lifecycle Automation, Interfax is our cloud-based fax solution, right? So if you want to move your fax operations into the cloud and take advantage of that SaaS offering, that's the place to go. If you're still looking kind of for on-premise document capture in fax, right, is our Accurate product. And both of those you can learn more about up on our website again at uplandsoftware.com.
Outstanding. Good stuff. Well, Shawn, thank you so much for the time today. I really, really appreciate it. Folks, with that, I'm going to wrap it up. I want to thank Shawn for his time, and on behalf of Aaron and myself, I want to thank everybody for listening. Thanks for everybody for telling a friend. Thanks for everybody for helping us grow the community. And with that, we're going to wrap it up, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to The Cloudcast. Please visit thecloudcast.net to find more shows, show notes, videos, and everything social media.